Up next on RotD, I grow up a little. Hello and welcome to RotD Review of the Day, and today I am reviewing Dario Argento's 1975 classic, Deep Red. Now, to get into this one, I need to give a little bit of a backstory. If you watched my review of The Changeling, this is going to follow a very similar format. I watched Deep Red before, and I didn't like it. When I watched it, it was within the context of a 24-hour movie marathon. And honestly, both my rewatch of The Changeling and of this movie are making me really think about what should be in my... I do this annually with the 24-hour Halloween movie marathon. I got one coming up real soon here, and I need to be making the movie lineup for it. And I'm really thinking about movies that shouldn't be on this list now. So I didn't like it. And I think it was a problem of when you're dealing with your 11th or 12th movie in a row and it's 2:30 in the morning, there's only so much your brain's able to process. And following the FMF guideline that I have as far as movies, especially horror movies, where in descending order you have films, movies, and flicks, I'm kind of thinking that films should not be a part of these marathons anymore. And rewatching Deep Red, this is a film. This is such an amazing piece of art. I didn't care for it at first. I found the music off-putting. I found the color of the blood off-putting. I couldn't see where people were coming from. I kept hearing, Mike, you gotta dive into Italian horror. You gotta watch some Dario Argento. And I thought the same thing about Suspiria. I didn't really care for that a whole lot, and I want to go back and rewatch it now, especially with the remake coming out. I want to do that, and Deep Red is a major reason why. So I watched it yesterday, and I was blown away by how beautiful it was. One of the bigger problems that I find with people that are trying to be over style and really embrace the visual storytelling medium that is cinema is oftentimes you wind up with style over substance. And in this one, it was style and substance both in beautiful concert with one another. It wasn't a magnificent horror film, as in it wasn't terribly scary, but it was a beautiful film. It was a great mystery. And how do I put this? I'm going to have not a deep dive discussion because I'm not going to be talking specifically about Deep Red. I have a feeling that there's probably about 12 million reviews of Deep Red that are going to be hitting points that I never even dreamt of. This is definitely a work of scholarly review, but I am going to be having, inspired by this movie, a segment of Coffee and Contemplation, which is a slightly different video thing where I talk about just more general thematic issues with horror films as opposed to a specific spoilery look at a particular movie. And I'm going to be discussing the difference between horror films and thrillers, and this movie is definitely the reason why that popped into my head. So before I go on any more of a rant, let's get into the categories. As always, 4 different categories, each one worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. And the plot, I gave a 21 out of 25. This was a fairly masterful mystery movie, had compelling characters. It starts out with a jazz musician in Italy that witnesses a murder of a psychic medium. And he is kind of unable to let some details of this go. Some things aren't adding up, and maybe it's his artistic nature or what, he doesn't know, but he feels compelled to figure some of this stuff out. He saw some things that his part of his brain recognized was something, but the other part of his brain isn't filling in that gap to tell him what that something is. And so it takes him down this rabbit hole where the further in he goes, the more dangerous this becomes. And it was really, really good. Surface level, just what was printed on the page of the screenplay, I really appreciated the twists and turns that this movie went down. A few of them I saw coming, but I can't really chalk that up to a level of foresight as much as, I mean, it was like, I don't know, 5-6 years ago I watched this in the first place, but it could just be that I'm simply recalling specific incidences of, oh, well, that's what he saw. And, I may have been subconsciously looking for it. If you had asked me prior to yesterday to describe any element of Deep Red, I probably wouldn't have been able to. It really did kind of get lost in the fog, but that doesn't mean that my brain wasn't clicking in time with it while I was watching it yesterday. So, 21 out of 25 for the plot. The intent, I gave a 17 out of 25, and I thought it was very exceptional. It was beautiful. I had to mark it down just because I really felt like it was trying to be scarier than it actually was, and it was trying to be more disturbing than it actually was. And that may be just me coming at it from the standpoint of reviewing a horror movie as opposed to reviewing a film. But regardless, this is the RotD Review channel. I don't review films. I analyze horror movies. And within that context, I felt like it fell a little flat. And as far as the disturbing nature of it, this may also be a situation where, separated out by, 30, 40 years, my goodness, 43 years, the sensitivity level of what is acceptable within cinema and what I'm used to as a movie watcher has likely changed and evolved and grown to callous things up a bit. So I have no doubt that when this was released, this was a very shocking movie. And as a story, it absolutely stands the test of time. As a disturbing movie, not quite so much. So 17 out of 25 for the intent. The acting, I gave a 21 out of 25. David Hemmings as Marcus Daly, the principal actor, was phenomenal. Secondary character of Daria Nicolodi as Gianna Brezzi was stupendous. The characters in here had chemistry. They had great interactions with one another. The acting performances were really sold well, and I have no complaints as far as that goes. 21 out of 25, very, very solid performances by everybody involved. The technical. I don't know any other way to put this, but I gave it a 25 out of 25. I thought that this was just a gorgeous, gorgeous movie. I was really blown away by how well everything was framed. Every shot was a painting, and it was just purposeful. The fact that, in one shot where you have two people in the foreground, the fact that people in the background were almost perfectly still in an environment that might have, society, by societal rules, been a fairly animated background. They weren't. They were, and so it made the foreground pop. Scenes where two characters were, long shot on either side of a statue, which was set dead center, and the characters were on the sides and talking to each other, almost having to yell at one another. They had said their goodbyes, but no, wait, I have one more thought. So, talking to each other from a distance. The way that was framed was just beautiful and gorgeous. The music, the music was really, really powerful. And I could see being distracted by it. I could see being a little bit off-put by it. It was very sensory overload-esque, but it served things well. And I think there was a certain level of, once you kind of accepted the aesthetic style of what this movie was, the beauty of it really came through. And the artistry and the purposeful nature of every scene really came through, and I loved watching this movie. The only other point that I'll touch on was the color of the blood. I think that is simply a matter of cultural, a matter of cultural perception and relevance of the time period. I'm not going to mark it down. Not for that. I think that is simply just one more thing to just kind of say, well, this is the way it is. What I'm talking about with the color of the blood, if you've never seen a Dario Argento movie, is it definitely does not have that deep red quality to it. It's more like, I don't know, hot pink, vibrant, definitely does not look like real blood, and it can be off-putting. When I first saw this, I thought, well, that looks just fake as hell. And once I kind of accepted, well, this is simply the way the blood is, and let's enjoy the storyline that's happening here, everything clicked into place. And I really, really do heartily recommend this. I see why people are saying that this was a masterful movie. I, on second viewing, have to agree. And I think this should be required viewing in any horror movie lover's catalog. So that should about do it for this review of Deep Red. I am going to have a coffee and contemplation on the difference between horror and thriller. And I really appreciate you making me a part of your day. Next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.